Hey everyone, welcome to the Fuck It All podcast. My name is Casey Let Gordon. I am your host, also the co-founder of It All Media. I invite all of you to go check out itallmedia.co for more on this show as well as all the other things we have cooking. Now, without further ado, let's jump right in. Today's guest, Lupin Campos, is a wonderful example of a fuck it all mindset. So she and I were just talking before we hit record, and she said, if I have to think about anything that I'm giving your listeners, it's that a fuck it all moment doesn't have to be that you leave everything you've known to start anew, to become an entrepreneur, to do something totally different. It can be taking a proverbial pause to rest, to reset, and to return, in her case, to a new job with a new sense of intentionality. Without, to jump right in, I want to welcome you to the show. Thank you for being here. And I'm so excited for this conversation because I think it is a different take on what we've covered so far.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited. I'm a little bit nervous. I'm self-conscious about my English as always, but I'm really excited.
That's modern womanhood, baby. To give a little background, um, we're born and raised in Argentina, already in your 30s, and after a brief period of living in Santiago, Chile, and Mexico City, you established in the US in 2019. You lived in New York, the Bay Area, and now right down the road from me in Atlanta. You studied industrial design, but then abandoned that profession since graduating and has been working in technology. You were a startup founder, then a venture partner at a VC firm, and finally as a product leader on a mission-driven companies like Sanity and Self and Greenlight. You are married with two young kids. You and I were just waxing poetic about the chaos that comes with that second child. One child is chaotic, but two for sure. Your kids are 4.5 and 19 months. And you've recently embarked on a self discovery journey. And to give some context to our listeners, we were introduced via a mutual friend almost a year ago, I think. And she said, I met this badass woman. She's so amazing. She has this amazing energy. She's come to the US from Argentina. She's built this product leadership career. She's a mom, all the things that you are, but they're also like the headline, right? They're what all of us see of doing it all. I'm like, damn, girl, you are doing it all. And then a few months ago, you shoot me a note out of nowhere and you're like, we have to talk because I just had a fuck it all moment. I left my job and I don't even know what's next. And what I loved about your moment of doing that is that you said, I'm okay with not knowing where I'm going to end up. And that to me is the biggest voice of fear that so many of us have in those fuck it all moments is like, I can't say fuck it all until I know where I'm going. But you bet on yourself and you took this proverbial pause. So, in your own words, talk to me about what the past 3 months have been for you as you've left one role, taken this pause, lived a life as a mom of two children, a partner to your husband, and recently landing your next gig.
Sure. First, I'm always all over the place, and I just realized that I gave you the bio wrong, and I moved to the US in 2015. So this is me in a nutshell. Like I give you all the homework, not precise. Um, so sorry, apologies to the listeners about that. But
We forgive you. I'll speak on behalf of us all. We forgive you for the 4-year
okay,
discrepancy.
so the question again. Well, this more recent factual moment, how it came, what happened.
Yeah.
So I like what you said about like you like that like the part about fear and about how I was okay, and I was thinking say how why was like I in retrospect say was I okay so fast, and I feel there are two big things that involve that kind of like put me on that what I consider a good spot. That was like I left this
Mm-hmm.
place, I left my secure job. The economy was blowing that right at that point, like especially in the startup world, especially in the fintech world, which is where I I've been working for the last 3 years. Um, and but I didn't have any fear because I did this, and I did this several times in my life, was like breaking up long relationships or leaving jobs or even moving. Like I went through the process before it happened. Like I had my morning of the situation, and I was like, before it happened. And it's also kind of like, in retrospect, it's like, hey, I was crying every day for a month or more, like, at work. Who, like, why would I cry at work? I'm a person that loves to, like, wake up, energize, and like, okay, let's get the kids to school. Let's work out. Let's go to, like da 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 da. Like I'm always on the run, and I'm always motivated and excited about working and about doing my things. I love to work, and I'm kind of like a workaholic on treatment because I'm a former founder. Was like I was working all the time, all the time, all day. And when I started working,
It's a product of that
yes, when I
environment.
started
Yeah.
working for other companies, and when I was like, I need to not have that mindset because I'm gonna die, right? But I was having during this,
Mhm.
like, I had this long process when I was like, I didn't want to wake up in the morning, and I was like, for a long time I had this excuse that I had a baby, and that's like my baby was not sleeping well, but he started sleeping well, and I still didn't want to wake up in the morning, right? And then I was at work every day, and I was like crying for, like, I would jump out of the call and just like sob and be like, what's wrong with me? So I think that's why when I finally made the decision, I saw it so clearly that I was like, oh, this is how I fix it, right? Just like, I'm gonna leave this place, and I'm gonna look forward and be like, figure out what I need to do, because this is not working for me, and there's no amount of pushing through that is gonna help me make this work. Like, I need to reset, and I need to figure out what's going on in my head. Why am I feeling so bad? It's like, I like my job, I like what I do. That was my biggest problems. Like, I'm in a great company. I have an amazing team. Like, I had my direct reports, and I adore them. I still talk with them. My colleagues, like, it was a great team, but it was something that was not working for me. Uh, but I was like, I need to leave this behind. And I've done this before with, as I said, with relationship, other jobs and whatnot. I know that the way it works for me is I need to remove what is not letting me think and just move to the next step. And the other thing is, I remember my first fuck it all moment, and that's when I kind of, my fuck it all mentality started, is when I left my first, like, post college job. And I decided to become an entrepreneur because I come from a family where it's like, you go to school, you graduate, you go to college, you graduate, you work for someone for 40 plus years, like my dad did, right? And then you
Yep.
provide for your family, and we're all happy. Um, and that was not like a mandate, but it was kind of like what I knew. That was like how it
Yeah, totally. You become what the
right.
stories you've seen, like those inform our beliefs, and then that informs the path we take.
So the first time I was like, I had my first Paquito moment. I was talking with my best friend um, from elementary. We went to different, we started different careers, and went to different universities, but we were friends through all that. And we were chatting, and she was like, hey, I want to leave this place. She was like, I think we should do something, we should build something. I was working on industrial design, that's what had went to college for, and she was working in software. But we were always like kind of like the geeks, and the ones that were always like um on the computer doing something, playing games, or even like the first one
Hmm.
in our group that had like email or Facebook or whatever it was, right? We were always trying to be there. Um, and we always play with the idea. We were like Thelma and Louise. Her name starts with T, mine with L. We were like T and L. We're like jumping this
Love.
cliff. We're like jumping on this car. We're going that cliff towards that cliff, and we'll see what happens. Um, and she brought this. I think she brought this paper about, like, she had found something about like fear, and how fear should not stop you but motivate you and whatnot. And that kind of, that clicked in my head. I
Mm.
was like, okay, fear is your friend if you know how to use it, if you use it as an impulse, right? So I think that's, since then, and this was 2008. So since then, that's how I faced all these moments of like extreme fear, when I was like, it's gonna be fine. I'll figure it out. Like, I've done it before. I know I can do it, and I know fear is my friend. Like, that's I think that's the mentality that helps this, like, fuck it all mentality on top of it. It's like,
Yeah. Okay, we have to unpack so much of this. First of all, I love it. Like I'm going to read my your book that's like fear is your friend and I'm like, "Yes, girl." And then I get in the moment when I'm scared and that bitch is not my friend. So, I need to know like how do you befriend her? Like what did that look like to you? One, having a partner in this, a friend in this, that is so powerful. I can speak to myself, Katie and I building this business like there is no one like your best friend that can help prop you up when you're scared and vice versa. But I'm curious for you, what did that look like? Because for me, fear a lot of times is disappointment of family. You mentioned like the model that you had, your dad, working for 40 years, you taking that on, being able to be carry the weight of someone who performed well in work and getting a lot of validation from that. That was a lot of my own identity. So I'm
Yeah.
curious for you, what did that actually look like? Like, give me the like beneath the hood there of like, was it as easy as it sounds?
For in that time, I think I had nothing to lose. The first time, so I think it comes with practice, right? As everything. So I started doing it way back in 2008, where I had nothing to lose. I had no relationships. Yeah, I hadn't met my ex at that point yet. Uh, I had no kids. I was still living with my parents. I was like, I can. I have nothing to. I was extremely privileged. My parents were like, well, you can give that a try. Worst case scenario, you go get a job. Like we can support you. I have savings. I've been saving for this, for something that I didn't know what it was, and I think it was for this. So I was like, I'm gonna live on my savings. We're gonna figure out. We're gonna make money soon. Like it's gonna happen because we wanted to do software development. So it's just like we need a few believers, and we're gonna hire a few like software engineers, and we're gonna like figure it out, right?
Mhm.
And we kind of did. We started having some basic enough money to live in, and she was getting married, so her position was different, but she comes from an entrepreneurial family, so her mindset was completely different. I was like, I need a cushion.
Totally.
I need a cushion, and then under that cushion is safe net, and under that safe net, like letters. I don't know. I need to feel like I can fall somewhere and be had right. So it really helped me being with her because she's been through that. She's seen, and I've seen that firsthand because I know her family from forever, and I was always kind of like a cousin that was like hanging around with all her. She has a really big family.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, her cousin was like my sister in school, and we pretended she was my sister, and I was like, oh, because she was like they were all blonde, and we were all like the brunettes. Um, so, and I've seen that in her family where she's like they had gone broke and they had built another business, and then they were like in the other end of the spectrum. And I was like, okay, they had that resilient, and I kind of like grabbed her and I was like, okay, you lead me through this because I had a really stable life my whole life, and this is scary as fuck. So we kind of like worked that out together, and that was for me that was the key,
Yeah.
her support.
I really like that you talked about that because so often, a lot of times we glamorize this fuck it all moment of like, and then I just left. And it's like, okay, that's great, but likely not the truth. And so for me, and I've talked about this on the show, December 2019 is when, first of all, 3 years prior, so take it back to 2016, 2017, I had a calling, right? I knew similar to you, like you've observed your friend through this entrepreneurial mindset. And it's like, that's interesting. There was some interest there that you were fostering, feeding. I had something similar. December 2019 is when I had my real critical, like mental moment of saying, I have to do something different. I did not make that leap until September of 2020. That is 9 months of saving a ton of money every month, of cutting my expenses, of updating the kind of vehicles we drove, like how we went out and spent money. So, like, similar to you, financial peace of mind was a big thing because I knew in order for me to show up and have be in a space where I can work and be forward thinking, I needed financial security and peace of mind. And so by doing that, it did feel intentional with the strategy. It was still terrifying and it was still a big moment and there was still a tremendous amount of unknowns, but I knew myself well enough to know what had to be true for me to be able to then deliver value in that
Because you
new
cannot
reality.
start with your like with your suitcase is full, right? You cannot start your journey dragging all that weight for you, the weight of like I'm
Yes.
worried of what are we gonna how am I going to feed my family at the end of the month? I remember your
Totally.
husband was on his MBA, right? So you were like kind of like,
Yeah.
we need to figure this out together and kind of make it
Yeah.
work. But I think it's that's the key. Like you need to know what you need to feel comfortable. Find that, and it might be money, it might be support, it might be a partner, it might be like however it looks for
Totally.
you. And then because there's a lot of people that feel more comfortable like living with the minimum, right? I know I need certain things, and I wanted to be able to accomplish
Yep.
that. I was like in my, I was like, how old was I? It's 20, I don't know, 25, 26. And I
Yep.
knew that I still wanted to go out and enjoy my time with my friends. And all my friends worked at a corporate staff or whatnot, and they had salaries. So I needed to
Yeah.
have at least something to be able to feel that I was able to participate in.
Well, if you didn't have quality of life, then why were you going to build this other thing? Like so often entrepreneurship especially is tied to autonomy over your time and how you spend it. And so if you had autonomy but no means to
Yeah.
go do
And
the
I
things
think,
that you
and
wanted
I
to
think
do.
and in the same way that it happened to you like years before. I remember I studied industrial design. The industry in general is not like for what Argentina is known for. So I remember talking with my friend and her dad one time, that same friend and he's like he's the most entrepreneurial person I've ever heard, I've ever met. And I was like, well, I don't know, because the problem with my career is that so hard to get a job doing this. You're always in that like in advertising and whatnot, which I ended up in. And he was like, but you can build your own thing. Like what you want to work for, just what you want to design, just build your own whatever design job or shop or whatever you want to do. It's just like he was like he saw it so clear. And that was when my mind was like, oh, there's another answer. Like it's not always what I've heard from home. It's like, oh, the what doors does this career open to you, right? It's like, no, you build your own door and you open it for yourself. Like kind of that was the mindset. So I
Yeah.
think that's when my mind started being like in this process. And like, and as I said, that was like my first like big fucking moment. And then from there on, every time I had like these different moments where fear was like crippling in, it was more practice and practice and practice. So I always try to have this safe net in the different whatever it was. Like I had another fucking old moment a few years later when I broke up a 6 year relationship that was like, oh, we were like gonna go moving together like soon. It was always soon, and then we are gonna get married and da da da. Da. And then I was like, it's never gonna happen. It's fine. I'm out. But I needed my safe net, and so I started an MBA, and when I was like, I need to do something to because I know that I'm gonna have all this free
Yeah.
time now. It's gonna drive me crazy, and that was my fear. It's like I don't wanna because my friends were already
Yeah.
like having kids and whatnot, and I've been wasting my time here. So I needed like, and that's why I was like, and then one of my best friends also like gave me a dog. At that point, I was like, this is what I needed. I can replace the human with a
Okay,
great.
so
Um,
how did you like so you know yourself really well because in these moments you're able to actually pinpoint what you need. Like to leave a relationship, some people might say, "Oh my god, I'm going to need like I'm going to need another love or I'm going to need my friends." And you may needed those things, but for you to say I'm going to have an influx of time and I'm going to have more capacity and what is going to be hard. So where can I if I have abundant time, where can I place that time and make it feel really important. Same thing with money. And so I think that so many of us, we know the thing that is wrong, right? You could say this relationship is wrong, and then we just feel paralyzed because we're starting in the creating piece of the. So for those of you that have been listening, and for those of you that are new, we talk about the practice of having an owning your respective all is define, create, own. And defining is an inward journey. It's to know what actually you're looking for. Creating is where we make those external changes, leaving a relationship, leaving a job, implementing boundaries, whatever those are. The own only comes later. That's these stories in this conversation where you're living your power, you're inviting others to come along. But in these moments, they just repeat and repeat in so many areas of our lives. But I have found, at least in my experience, I only knew the outward part, because that's where I got so much of my personal validation as a young woman, like coming into my own. But it sounds like from a very early age, I mean, honestly, mid 20s and maybe even earlier, for you to really be able to pinpoint that inner knowing of where you needed it, like where did that come from? I'm fascinated by that.
I don't know. I'm really needy, so that's so I like I guess I is all that pre-pro like the pre-fuck it all moment process that I mentioned that I have, where it's like I start mourning the situation and I start imagining myself and what's going to happen once I break up with this person, what's going to happen once I leave this job, and whatever gives me fear there is like, oh, that's what I need. So I'm going to break up and I'm going to have so much. I'm going to be
Yeah.
crying by myself in bed all day because I work at
Yeah.
home at that point. I was a founder. We like my partner lived
Yeah.
an hour away from the city, so we each work from home. I was at that. I at that point I was already living by myself and whatnot. I was like, I'm gonna be in this house crying every day, just like working, crying, eating, crying, sleeping, crying. That's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
So I started like forcing myself. Like I was like, I need to leave the house, and I started like thinking like what, and I wanted to do something. Like I want to study again. I wanted to study again, and that was like, okay, maybe it's time for me to do this MBA and start like meeting new people and being outside the house. And then my friend who also knows me now, she was like, "You, what you need is a dog," because I was like, "You're really good at leaving your house at the time you had to go to college," and this was like a working MBA situation, was like a year
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
extended thing. Um, but then the rest of the day you're just in your PJs, like being needed. So
Yeah.
she adopted this dog for me, which is something that's not recommended, but we know each other enough to be like she
Right. Do not take that as something that everybody should do.
um,
And if your friend is coming
we
up
know each
giving
other
you
since we
another
were
living
4,
being.
and we
Yeah.
were like 29 at that point. So it's like 25 years of knowing each other, and she knew that. And he was the best dog
Yes.
ever. I started like, okay, it's the morning. This dog needs to pee. I need to wake up. I need to leave the house. And that's like, for that, I need to get dressed. And that helped me so much, right? So that added the other layer of um,
Yeah.
having something to care about that was not like my own stuff.
So I love your practice. Like I'm all about a framework because, hashtag former
Mm.
consultant. You mourn the situation, envision it is, oh my gosh, she just showed me all of her sticky notes. It's literally like a wallpaper of sticky notes. I love it.
That's my framework.
um Mourning the situation of what it is, that's the indicator, that feeling inside something is not right, something needs to change. Elaine Fluker, she's been on the show, she has a book, Get Over I Got It, and she talks about living the question, right? Something is off here, I don't know what that is, or maybe I do know but I don't know what the next steps are. Just live that, just sit in that space, and it always passes faster than I expect it to. I think, oh my god, it's going to last for it doesn't. Just someone who's been through it now a few times. The second is envision what it will be and what gives you fear. The fear is the thing you need. So if leaving a job, the fear is that I don't have money to live my life, focus on how you can give yourself the peace of mind so that you can take that jump. Oh my God, I'm going to leave this relationship. I'm going to have all this time and I'm going to be really down in the dumps and I'm not going to have a purpose or direction. Great. So what can give me purpose? What can give me direction? What can give me something structured to do with my time? Again, not recommending a dog or MBA for everybody that needing to leave a relationship, but that was your
It's like,
journey.
yeah, but know
Um,
yourself and know what is gonna make you. And sometimes you need to
yeah,
force yourself a little bit to get out of the situation where you don't want to be. But it's so easy to fall into that. Like
yeah.
this latest like situation where I was like, I left my job after all this suffering, and I was like, okay, how I'm gonna have 3 months because I decided it was gonna be 3 months. And
You decide. Okay, so I was curious about that of like, were you taking this off like indefinite? I'm just gonna go find myself, or were you like, no, 90 days and
yeah,
then we'll
I was
figure
like,
out.
I need 3 months because I needed it to be structured because I know myself and I know I need structure. Um, then because it was only if it was only 2 months, I had visits. My parents were coming, my in-laws were coming, so it's like I'm not going to spend all my free
That wasn't
with
for
them.
you. That was for other
Yes,
people. Yep.
um, and then because I like to work and I feel really I don't know. I have a really hard time feeling productive, quote unquote, if I'm not working. And also, like at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, I'm super privileged again. Super privileged. My husband has a good job. We're in good economic. financial situation. I so I was like, I can take this time, but this cannot last forever. Or if it does, I need to talk with my husband, and we need to figure out.
There's going to be a different
I was
day-to-day
like, when all
reality.
this exploded, right? I was like, what if I want to become a cake decorator? Because um, I'm really good decorating cakes. I need to say that. So all my friends were like,
Okay, so my daughter's next birthday, I'm giving you a
okay, I
call.
have a year. I have a year to work on that. Great. Yeah, my daughter loves them. So I was like, well, I'm gonna take, like, what if that's my calling? And my husband was like, well, if that's your calling, we need to talk, because the salary of a cake decorator, or the money you can make as a cake decorator, it's probably not related with what you do as a person in tech, as a director in the tech industry.
I mean, just quick guess, but
I'm saying,
yeah.
like, maybe you're like big hit on Instagram and suddenly whatever. But
Yep.
I mean, he was like, I'm not opposed. We need to talk about that. Like, we need to figure out how this is going to work, right? So I was like, okay, give me a few months. I'm going to figure it out. And that's why I was like, it's going to be 3 months. Um, I'm gonna I'm gonna do what I do as a product manager, or what I always did as a product manager. Is like, there's there's a problem here that I need to solve. Let's get into discovery mode. So I started opening my and even before leaving the company, like, after I quit, I stayed for a few weeks, like, helping everyone set up and all, for like 3 weeks. But I started talking with everyone that I knew that had been through a moment like this, where it was like they were burned out, or they had to leave a job, like they didn't know what to do, or they have like these fucking moments. And I listen to your podcast
Mhm.
a lot. I listen to no, seriously, I listen to
Thank you.
we can do hard things. Like, I was like, I'm gonna listen all these podcasts that are
Yeah.
gonna, like, help me when I'm trying to figure out. I read a book called this life design, or designing your life. I don't remember the name.
Yeah, it's design thinking applied to your life. It's great. We'll put that in the show notes. I took a course on it when I also went through my fuck it all moment. I really recommend just using that
That framework's
framework
great. Like,
for it.
as you, I need a framework. I need to, but I kind of like build my own. It's like, okay, I'm gonna open this. I'm gonna talk with as many people as possible. I'm gonna take what works for me. I'm gonna journal. I'm gonna do my post-it notes. And every time I was talking with someone, and I think I have some that are motivated from our first conversation here. Um, there, there are some from talking with my friend. These are the ones on this side are from my therapist. So I'm just for the audience. I'm pointing here at different group
Love
of
it.
post-its. When I started
Her wallpaper of
I started doing,
post-its.
yes, I love it. It's like there are some of them are starting to get off the wall, which is hard hard to experience. But I started talking with my therapist again after 9 years. I had left Argentina when I moved to Chile in 2013 after breaking up with this long relationship. And I was like, why am I not doing therapy? Like, I just, like, for the conversation. Like, I realized that that's what works for me. I need to talk my problems. Like, I reached out to my one of my best friends. I was like, we need to talk. Like, we need to talk about this, because she was going through something similar to. Well, like, we talk, and it was like voice messages coming back and forward, because we have different time zones. We
Yeah.
both have 2 kids, and it was like kind of a mess. So we're like sending voice memos back and forward. Um, and I was like, this is what I need. I need to talk. I need to take what works for me from all these conversations. I started a coaching group for, like, this called Emerge, that is for women that are in this transition periods and
Yeah.
whatnot. And I was like, this is what works for me. This is what I need. So, and then once, like, a month and a half went by, I was like, okay, so what do I want to do? And I started looking forward, like, after, at that point. But before, it was just gathering information, analyzing what happened, analyzing, like, trying to find, because I, of course, you leave a job and you're like, because they and that and what they did and this happened. The
Totally.
fault was everyone else's, and I was like, wait, let's take some ownership here. And that was the hardest part. I
Yeah.
cried so much there. I was like, oh, I could have put myself in a better situation. There are things that I couldn't have changed, but I could have handled it in a different situation where I wouldn't have been the one crying every day. Um,
Yeah.
or I could have left sooner, maybe, and avoid all the crying. But I was like, well, my team, and I want to support them, and I want to give everything else a chance, and da da da, like all these things. So, but I think that things happen for a reason, and all the suffering helped me figure out that I needed to take this time for myself. I hadn't taken time for myself in such a long time. And in the middle, I had two kids. One of them was almost not conceived, but like build because I got pregnant in February 2020. So it was like
Woo.
the worst like 4 months of morning sickness with a toddler at home during a pandemic. And all that was so much stress. And like we talk about this, I have a super supportive partner, and this is like a real partnership. But he was selling his company, so he was like in meetings he could not have a toddler jumping around because he was negotiating and he was doing all
Yep.
this stuff, right? So I was like kind of like leading with the toddler at home when I was not feeling great because I was pregnant. I was like under a lot of stress in my company and my job, and it was so
And you don't have family here.
with
You
my
all have
family here.
relocated. So it's not like you have an immediate support
My
system.
in-laws live in Spain, so they couldn't fly here until like November 2021 because they were not authorized to enter the US. My parents live in Argentina. Their airport was closed until December 2020, and that's the point that they came right away. They were like running to the airport. They took the first flight out of Argentina to Atlanta.
Amazing.
So they were
Amazing.
like, I have all that support, but during that time it was like really hard pregnancy and the first 3 months of the baby,
Yeah.
just no help, no support in a pandemic. So it's like we couldn't even throw money at the problem, right? It's not like, oh, we can have people come help us because we were like all freaked out and it was like we had a newborn. Um,
Yeah.
and before that, I was pregnant. I was like, it was really, really hard. So that all that built up, and then we got to the point where it's like, I have all this stress that I never worked through from that time, and then I have the house, the husband, the two kids. Like I'm missing the white fence, right? Because that's not my
Yep.
style of house, but I have all the rest. So I was like,
The proverbial white fence.
exactly. I was like, now what, right? So I'm gonna keep working
Yeah.
here and then working somewhere else and then working like that's not what I want. And I realized years ago that these you go to college, you graduate, you start working, you die model doesn't work for me. So it was a lot of thinking about trying to figure out what does work for me. I also have this. My husband is he has a really clear idea of what he wants, which is always kind of like I feel bad, I feel terrible. So yeah, how can you be so clear on what you want? And he's even like he's 3 years younger than I am. So I was like, why you kid know what you want, and I that I'm the old and wise one here have no clue, right? And at a point I was like, do I want what? Because we also have this plan in common for the long term that we would like to have this house in the countryside in Spain and like do all this. Like I was like, is that my dream or is that his dream or is such a thing as of like a shared dream exists? And I kind of
Yeah.
came to the conclusion that it does, and I want we have that dream together, and I want to do that. But what I want to do to get there is different than how he wants to get there, and that was my realization during this time. I was like, okay, so I want to keep working and specializing on what I'm doing. I want to keep building a career and a name on these specific. I do product growth on fintech companies, like really specific.
Hyper specific that you've built your expertise, your
Exactly, exactly.
nation.
So then in the future, when we do this thing, we move in the middle of nowhere to our house. I can keep being a consultant and I can keep doing these and keep my brain active and keep like working towards that because I have this expertise. And I realized that. And when I left my job, I started getting people. First, it was like recruiters reaching out, saying, "Oh, based on your LinkedIn," I was like, "Okay." But then I had people I worked with before, being like, hey, you should talk with so and so because they are searching for someone and you're the right person. Hey,
Yeah.
you should talk with them. I was like, okay, so I'm starting to build this. I can keep doing this
Yeah.
for a few more years until the time has come for me to leave the US and go back to Spain and build our new life there. But take with me all this expertise and take with me all this quote unquote brand, right? So it put me in a different position. Was like, oh, now that I'm searching
Yeah.
for a job, I know which type of job I want because this is what I want to specialize on. Whereas before, I was just talking with all the companies. Let me plug my computer. Sorry. I was talking with all the mothers.
Hey, can you give me just literally 1 second? My daughter's dance class just called. I
Yeah,
just want to make sure. I apologize. Just give it. We'll pick right back up. Just give me one
you're good.
second. Okay, we're good.
All good. Okay. Just
Yeah,
before
thank you.
we keep recording, if we can wrap up 12:50, 11:50. Sorry, my husband
Yeah,
has a 12
yeah.
interview. He was like, "Do you mind?"
I think
Yeah.
we're good.
Like,
Yeah, I think
I
we're
don't
good.
want to keep talking that much. It's gonna hate me.
No, it's perfect. No, 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 no. So I really like this idea that we talk about because we elect in, sometimes I feel a lot of guilt of I elected in willingly, went into these roles like a mother, like a wife, like a business leader, like all of these homeowner,
Yeah.
etc. And they do come with immense privilege for us to be in these spaces that we elect into and to be healthy in them. Like that's amazing. And then they get to be really hard sometimes, especially when they're working in concert. And I really appreciated the reflection that you had around your goals, your husband's goals, and shared goals. Because when you're building a life with someone, one, it's exciting and motivating to dream together. My husband and I have this conversation a lot, and we were coexisting over the past 2 years. We called each other roommates essentially. Like he was working full time in the program. I had left my job, was running our household. We had a toddler. So any free time we did have was spent tending to her and creating that sense of family. And then you layer in a pandemic. Like there was just a lot happening. And so some of our awakening and really like reviving of intimacy as a partnership is dreaming together and coming back to understand like how that person has evolved, how I have evolved, how we can grow. And so I really appreciated that you were had the awareness to say my husband and I have this dream that we've talked about building this retreat, this home in another country, and that's our later in life plan, but our plans to get there look differently. And also, I'm curious if some of your conversations with self were like, you said that you get a lot of work, validation and worth out of work. So, like, would that be the kind of validating work? Like, it's different and it could be amazing, but also, like, I may miss this part of myself, this personal brand, this expertise. And so, I sometimes think that we get so stuck in this like very specific how, but you said if I continue to build my personal brand, I give myself more options to then achieve this goal. And that's the biggest thing is it's not an or, and also have an outlet for these other things that I find a lot of value in, a lot of worth in, a lot of gratification. And so I just think that's an important piece to talk about here is that it's an and like you can dream with your partner or in other parts of your life you can occupy these spaces fully while also still honoring what you as an individual want. And it takes immense strength and practice, I think, in order to carve out the space and honor your own needs, especially in a world that so often as women and as mothers and as partners we are serving everyone else. um, that in itself takes a tremendous amount of discipline and is like the most radical our act of self-care is to protect our own energy and to like create the space for us to know our own needs.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I think I talk about this a lot in therapy. So I look like, oh, like, oh yeah, I have this so clear right now. It was a process, right? So I think that anyone listening needs to understand that part. Like what we're talking here, and what you usually talk in your show is the product of the process, and
Yeah.
we don't have to lose that, like, out of sight. We don't have to put that out of sight. And I talk a lot with my therapist about that. He was like, I was like, listen, I'm a mom. I love my children to death. I will give them, like, I want them to be happy the most. I don't identify myself. I don't find my worth as a mom, right? There's people that do,
Mhm.
and God
Yes.
bless them. I can't. Like, I tried my first, when I had my first kid, I was like, I'm gonna stay home, see how it feels. And I was like, no, no, it doesn't feel. That's not for me. Um, because I didn't feel that worth, or that, like, uh, I don't know. I didn't feel as good as I feel when I'm working. And also, like, I had a daughter, and I want her to see me as a woman, that an equal partner to her husband, and all these things. And I feel that's gonna help her too. But I'm doing this for me. Right, at the end of the day, it's like I can paint it.
But by taking care of
Yeah,
you, you then show up better. Like, so
that's
it's in service of the other roles, but yes, it's selfish, air quotes, of what you
but
need.
I feel like it's so important, and as a mother especially, to understand what you need, and to be truthful to that, and show that to your kids. And it's like, I don't want for my kids, especially for my daughter, the example to be like, oh, a working mom is the bomb. No, the bomb is a mom that takes care of herself and does the things that make her happy, and that make her look
Yeah.
for. And she's the opposite of myself, and like, she's the most, like, girly, like, babies and, like, all those things. So she's probably like, but if your worth is being a mom and being the best mom, like, go do that, right? It's like, that's the message I
Mhm.
want to transmit her. But I didn't want to stay working. I didn't want to stay at home and be miserable, and her seeing that I was not living a full life. So that's the part, was like, why I'm
Yeah.
doing this, quote unquote, for her. But it's also because I want her to understand that I'm doing it for me. I don't know. It's kind of like, it makes sense. But
No, I think that like communicating that process to our children, to the next generation, to our community is really important. That's something that I've really reflected on a lot, is to explain, even looking at like our own examples of my mom, of friends, of relationships, to say, to understand their thinking and their thought process. It creates tremendous amount of understanding, of empathy, and also is empowering to say like, oh, she did that for herself, so then she can be better in these spaces. And so I think that, I mean, everybody has their own relationship with parenthood and motherhood, but for me, certainly, it's how do I model and create visibility into transparency into my decision making and to how I think about myself, how I treat myself. That is, it's like kind of like in math when you have to show the work versus just giving the answer. I try to practice the show your work method of how I
that is
arrived
great.
here.
That's like,
And that it's hard, right? Because then you have to also check in with yourself to say, why did I do this, or why did I elect to do this? The last piece I want to talk on is, you mentioned the morning of what was, and you mentioned it in your relationship, you mentioned it in leaving this job. And so often, I was talking to a founder this morning, and she and I were talking, and she said, I'm so scared. She was doing fundraising, and she said, I'm so scared to go back to
oh,
fundraising
it's the worst.
because it is the worst, right? It
I've
is the
done that.
worst.
I've been a founder
But she
before. I've
said,
done that. It's the worst.
yeah. She said, it wasn't successful last time, so I'm fearful it won't be successful this time. And we had this really amazing conversation of, it wasn't successful last time because it wasn't the right money, the right time. What are you grateful for from this situation? If we had to say a year ago, had I received that money, what would I have not learned today? I wouldn't have learned that I needed a different team. I wouldn't have learned that our evaluation of a company could be large. Like, there's so much. And so I think in mourning, again, going to this notion of and, not or, it's not like I'm mourning because it was bad. It's like I'm mourning this because this was really important to me, and my needs have changed, and I'm honoring that, and it's hard, and I had fault in this just like I had somebody else had fault in this. And now I have moved through that process. I have gone through that inward process, and now I can make a decision that is in a more affirmative, positive space. That doesn't mean
Yeah.
it's not painful. And I think that the coexistence of pain and it being good for you, or experiencing loss and growth, they are, in my experience, having now sat with this and talked to so many women like yourself, like, I think that when the biggest takeaway is I've taken from today's conversation is you almost having your antennas up when you start to mourn something, when you start to grieve, like crying every day at your job. That is mourning in its truest form, right? Tears, grief. And then you just say, like, I'm going to sit with that and know what that means to me. It's a healthy relationship, not just with fear, but with grief as well. And knowing that it's a signal of
Yeah,
change.
that's, I feel like it gives you so much power to to allow these feelings to happen and to like see them, live them, feel them. I don't know. It feels like it felt for me. It felt like a really powerful moment when I was like, "Oh, I know what's happening here. I need to get out. I need to get myself removed from this situation to understand what's going on." And it was kind of like a click. And in retrospect, I see it now. It's like it was so obvious, like a month before I quit, right? Like, how? Why didn't I do that at that point? But that was the
Yeah.
process. That was my process. I needed to go through it, and that made me be. That pushed me to the point where I acted about it, right? It's not only leaving, like, because
Yeah.
if I quit it like a month or two before, I would have searched another job and just move, keep moving, right? Maybe take a week or two in between and then
Yeah.
keep moving. Whereas I push myself to the point where it's like, okay, what I need to do right now is to listen to myself. And there's so much noise around me that I need to remove myself from here and work on me, work on what I want, how I want it, why I want it. Why am I crying
Yeah.
this much? Like, why am I not happy anymore?
Yeah.
Why does this place where I'm at right now doesn't why doesn't this work for me anymore? And might work for someone else, but it
Yeah.
doesn't work for me. What do I need? So once you answer all these questions or try to, then when you move to the next chapter, you have this checklist of things, and that's exactly like the same for relationship. Like for me, it's like it works exactly the same. When i when i broke up with my ex, I was like, what was not working for me? And suddenly those all these things pop up and were so clear. I was like, it was 6 years. Like there's like basic things, like I love breakfast. Like for me, having breakfast in the weekends is like the best moment. My ex didn't drink coffee, he didn't like breakfast, he was like boring, right? I was like, how did I stay in a situation where we will never have breakfast in the morning? Like, let's go to the coffee shop. Like, let's go. Like, that would never happen. And also one of my most favorite things. So whenever he was somewhere else, I would go do that myself. It's like, why did I put myself in a situation where the
Yeah.
things I really love, I'm not living? And the same with the job, right? It's like, why am I putting myself in a situation where I'm having a relationship with a manager that I feel is not empowering me, and it's not like helping me grow, and it's not like guiding me the way I would like to. What I'm doing this with my team, and I feel that is possible. It's being like, you can do it. So I need to find a way to get someone that gives me that, right? And when I met my husband, the first
Yeah.
thing we did, we well, not the first one, but one of the first things we started doing was like going out for breakfast. I was like,
Yeah.
I love this. This is great. Like we're having like our after our first night together, we were like he woke up, he was like, do you feel like going for a coffee shop, like just have breakfast? And I was like, I think I love for like a year.
No, but it's the conversation of when things feel resistant or
Yeah.
hard versus easy and in flow. And I think that like it can it can be it doesn't mean that all resistance or negative feelings are
Yeah.
bad. It actually can be you appreciate the flow and that you to know what the bad feels like contrast. Light is only good because we know dark. Night is only good because we need reprieve from light. And what I heard from you in this proverbial pause, I envisioned you in every moment that you're talking is like you're in a room where the volume is so loud and it's like yelling down and you're like sensory overload. You haven't slept in days and it's like, God, I can't even process. And what you've done is like, I am quieting the noise. I am resetting. I am resting. I'm maybe going to do a little meditation, like all of this in like the proverbial sense. And then I'm going to return. I don't need sleep for 5 years. I just need maybe a weekend of rest to return to my life. And so, what I'm hearing is your practice is it's not that you're living a life that is not aligned with your values, but it is that the life catches up. Like we take on these big lives, we occupy these big roles And it's the most, again, most radical act of self care is when we know our own needs and then we honor those and also know that this feeling of negativity, of grieving, of mourning is not forever. It is a temporary state and it is an indicator that something is off. So like I think about like becoming friends with fear, it's becoming friends with grief, it's becoming friends with resistance, it's becoming friends with mourning, it's this like all of this is part of our human experience, and the more we befriend it and see it as like thank you for being here to let me know that I needed to make a change or that it was time to rest, like that to me is such, just to use your words, it's a much more empowered stance versus life is happening to me. It's like I get to play in concert with these things and they're my friend and they're here letting me know that like I now am evolving to like a bigger, more fully expressed version of myself.
That's yeah, that's a great way of saying it. I like to say, I think it's really important the way we talk about ourselves. I like to describe myself as a happy person. So whenever I'm not in a happy place, I know it's temporary because I know I'm a happy person, right? So like, I can
Yeah.
walk through this. I will do whatever. And this, I remember it clearly when I that broke up in that long relationship. I sent an email to a group of friends that we had like this chain, early 2000s.
Mhm.
And I sent an email saying, hey, we broke up and blah, 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 but it's fine. I'm devastated, but I'm a happy person, so I'm going to be fine. And that stood with me. And that's the same, like, that stayed with me. And like, it's the same now. It's like when I was in this situation, I was like, I was scared. I was really sad. I cried for weeks after quitting because I was like, I was leaving an amazing team that I loved, and I was leaving a place where I gave my all, like, and it couldn't make it work, and like, all these things. But I knew ultimately that it was gonna be fine again, because that's who am I. Like, I identify myself as a happy person, and I like take that. So whatever happens, if I'm not happy, I know something is wrong and I have to remove it and I have to go back to my happy place. Um, and I'm positive
Mm.
and I like to see things that way. And I encourage anyone to try to put that perspective and be positive. And it's like, be more positive about life. Like, it's beautiful. It's amazing. It did help that I quit in
Mhm.
spring in Atlanta. So so many walks, meditation outside in the backyard. It was like
Right.
perfect weather. It did help. Like,
Yeah. I mean, environmental can make a
yes,
big difference, y'all. So anybody that is having a fuck it all moment, come on down to
yeah.
Atlanta in the spring. Will do not come in July because
You're
it's
gonna
too
hate me.
hot. But if you come in the spring, we'll take you.
The fall is nice
Um,
too. Leaves.
yeah, okay, good disclaimer. I mean, if Atlanta's tourism board wants to use this for a plug, we are here for you to talk about fuck it all moments. This is the retreat in the off season. Um, Lupin, thank you so much for being on the show today. This was, I think, a really important conversation that fuck it all moments don't mean burn it all to the ground always. It can be, but it can mean that I'm taking this pause, I'm honoring myself. And again, the most radical act of self care, knowing ourselves, knowing our needs, taking action, and then getting right back in the arena when we're ready.
Yeah, I love that message. I feel like it feels like so much pressure when you say, "Oh, so now I need to, like, if I say fuck it all, I need to open a NGO and say penguins in whatever." I was like, "No, it's not that way. It's nice. It's nice. It's great to do.
That's
Yes.
great if that's
Is
your
that your
journey,
journey?
but
Love it. Love that for you. But it can be going back to I'm going back to exactly the same industry. I'm going back to exactly the same role. I'm going back to solve really similar problems. And I couldn't be more excited about that, because I feel like I'm continuing my journey, but with my head in the right space. And I'm super thankful for myself for being able to say that, hey, you need this time, take it. My husband for supporting me during that process, and all my friends that I drive them all crazy. I was like, I need to talk about this with everyone, and I told everyone that I could. And so it's not always black or white, right? It can be.
it almost
It's
never
yeah,
is.
it's almost never. I think those are more like once in a lifetime situations and like one-off
Yeah.
situations. They're like, it's normal to go back where you were, but it's you need to work on yourself and make sure that your head is in the right space, and that's going to help you thrive in all the other. Okay.
Yeah. Completely. This conversation on the Fuck It All podcast today, it is for our fellow modern women out here redefining what it means to have it all in our own way. This is an It All Media production. Head over to itallmedia.co/join. That join there is important to get on our newsletter. It is the best way to get weekly updates on all our content, events, workshops, happenings. And if you like what you heard, drop your girl a 5-star review because that is how we find more modern women and men. Um, so thrilled for this conversation. I'm Casey Let Gordon, the host here at Fuck It All, and we will see you next time.